Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today Show. I am your host, Rebecca Weintraub, and I am here today with Azriela Jankovic. How are you, Azriela?
I'm doing well. Thank God. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's been a great day, and I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Likewise.
So we were just talking, viewers, before the show about our names, and we thought maybe we'd share some of this with you because it's actually pretty interesting. So I asked Azriela, does she want me to use her nickname or does she want me to use her formal name to introduce her? And why did you tell me to use your formal name?
Well, it was really interesting. And I think you shared with me about the meaning of a name and the vibration of a name. And I think it really spoke to me on a deep level because I chose my name years back. It wasn't actually my given name. And it has a lot of meaning for me. And as much as I use a nickname in different arenas of my life, my full name is Azriela. So if someone's interested to say a few extra syllables, I welcome that.
I love that. And I will always use those extra syllables because I do believe that, we're going to talk about what you're creating and your coaching and everything that's going on for you. But just the little bit that I know, it just feels so powerful. And for me, Azriela really carries that power. So I'm glad you chose it at least for our show today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We can definitely talk a lot about the power of names and what they mean for a person. And before we start, I'm so interested. I'm so excited to be here and be on your show. I've seen your show. I've seen a few of the episodes, and there's always a different energy. And there's this common theme that you really bring a certain sense of intuition to the platform with you and your interviewee, which got me wondering what is it exactly that you do when you're not doing this?
Well, if you mean, I guess, with my coaching and my purpose, my purpose is universe. By the way, this isn't normally how the show goes. Like I'm the question asker, okay, but I'm indulging today.
Please, please indulge me. Please indulge me.
So, so a lot of us search for a long time for a purpose. And I think when we actually find it, we realize we had it the whole time. But I think a lot of us are always like looking in the external, like almost like we're in a jungle and we've got to look through the brush to try to find that golden egg or something. The more I started studying spirituality and the more I understood about it, the more intuition became really important to me and clearer. And so what I do now is I help other coaches, specifically, I help individuals as well, but I help other coaches develop their intuition so that they can better serve their clients in sessions. And what I found is that intuition is not just that gut feeling that you get. That is part of it. It's an indicator that tells us something. Usually it's either based in fear or anxiety, something about the past or something about the future. But it's not all of it. What intuition is really our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our spiritual dimensions coming together to work in tandem so that it creates this intuitive flow where we become clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. And so the way that we use that in life and the way we can use it in coaching is if we are hearing things that are not coming from our own mind, and if we are seeing things that are beyond what our normal sight shows us, and we are feeling things outside of ourselves and able to take in other people's, frequencies. We are now connected on a level where we're outside of ourselves, but we're also using this outer power that's so much bigger than us and loves us to help direct our lives. So in coaching, if you're with a client and you have these sort of clair abilities coming through, we're not stuck in our head trying to think of the next question. We're not stepping inside of their emotional box, and we're not like worried or fearful that we're not the best coach in the world, or is this person going to hire us again? Like all those things that come up. So we're
Yeah,
able to,
that makes sense. Rather than coming from a place of fear, you're coming from a place of connection and acceptance with what is. Is that right?
yeah. And it's, this leads when that intuition shows up, what I've found, and this is the most recent discovery that I've had, because I spent a long time doing spiritual studies, is that for me, in the past, it's gotten way too intense to the point of where I've lifted off the ground, basically. And what is really important is to make sure that those 4 dimensions are balanced so that we don't tip off in one direction too much. The intuition and that flow comes through most prominently and most stable and balanced when we have all 4 dimensions balanced. And that's what creates the manifestations in our life where we see miracles all the time. And where those serendipitous moments just become our life. They're not those moments where you're like, I can't believe that just happened. It's like with absolute gratitude, you say, of course it happened.
Yes, yes, absolutely. To look at our lives from the vantage point of, this is the story that is my perfect story. Of course that happened.
And we get to change our story. And we get to change our story because we're constantly changing. And so is our purpose. Our purpose is not just one singular thing that stays stationary. It has movement. It can be multiple things. And we almost like when we find it, like that's why the maintenance is so important, to keep everything clear, because we kind of just like latch on to that purpose, and then it like takes us along for this ride. And that's the beauty of life. That's life right there.
I, I so hear you. And I think what you said about the power to change our story and the power to constantly change is so real for me. And when we think about it scientifically, we think about the fact that the human body regenerates itself on a constant basis. A person can commit to a goal and fight against gravity in a workout or mental exercises, or even by changing surroundings, and be transformed. As you know, transformation is the topic of our interview. Completely transformed. It's really so profound what you said about change.
Now, of course, I'm going to say, please tell us about your transformation, because I can't wait to hear about it.
It's so interesting, Rebecca, about this topic of transformation, and about, when you asked, tell us about your transformation. I feel like my answer is evolving and my transformation is evolving very much in the way that you talked about how change is the only constant. So in terms of a specific transformation, where would you like me to start?
I'm always like a reverse engineer. So like I always think about, oh, what's the poignant thing at the end that I want to share? And then I think back to be like, well, how do I set that up? That's always like when someone asks me to tell a story, that's before I begin, I always like think of the link back, or the different links in the chain that get me to the powerful thing I want to share. So does that help?
So I'm going to think about that for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there have been a lot of different transformations in my life. And I think the one that comes to the foreground right now is being in this business/startup coaching consulting world that I really immersed myself in over the last 6 months. And I was in a meeting just the other day with a few different individuals from this region. There were some Palestinian business people, some Israeli business people, a colleague of mine, and myself. And we're sitting in this room, and I had this moment of awakening to my surroundings. And it was this feeling of, wow, this is really a different context that I'm sitting in than I was sitting in a year ago, after I had just given birth to my 4th child and was at home with him, or a year prior to that when I was working really busily in my first job here in Israel in education, and simultaneously helping my family in our first year as immigrants here to get adjusted and really get acclimated here. So those were several different steps in the transformation. And a year before that, I was living in Los Angeles, finishing up my work as an education specialist and also completing a doctorate in education leadership and putting the finishing touches on my research there. So I look back at a real process. And, it's interesting because in 2015, when I was finishing up school and wrapping that chapter up, and also packing up our home in California to move across the world, there was a lot going on. And when we were in school, we had a class called creativity. And, creativity has become, in my opinion, this like cliche word in education, where 21st century learning is very much based on several principles, one of them being creativity, collaboration, all of the elements that are involved in innovation. And we all had to take this course. And in the beginning, I think I was even skeptical. And as much as I was skeptical, I was also inspired because I love art. I'm such an appreciator of art and music and creativity, the cliche word. But in any case, over the course of the course, I really opened up to the possibilities for creativity. And something I was inspired by at the time was this notion that immigrants have a certain advantage, because immigrants are taken out of a certain box and then put into a new one. And they bring with them the memories and the understanding that they had been surrounded by in their place of origin. And they are then transported into this new context in which time and space and concepts of time and language and behaviors and tradition, architecture, so I could go on and on, so many things are different. And yet there are certain forms and functions from the original context that have such a valuable application in this new context. So my husband and I, on a very down-to-earth practical level, are always talking about how we would love to go to Trader Joe's in this country, and we don't have it. So it's this very clear example of a number of ways where we feel that a certain innovation would really bring out the natural beauty in our new context and really bring an innovation. And we're always talking about these things, and it really, coming here has really gotten our creative juices flowing. And I think it's common here because this is a nation of immigrants from all over the world. It's on a regular basis, I will be in a room with people from 3, 4, 5, 6 different countries of origin. And with that many ideas about life and culture and where we come from, it's so much more than a physical place. There's an idea that in the Torah, there's an idea that where we are from is a point of connection for our souls. And I don't know where you're from originally, but if someone were to say something not so favorable about that place, the idea is that it would touch you. And if someone were to say that they've been there and they appreciated it and they loved it, it would really be a strong point of connection for you. So I believe that. And I feel so grateful to have been born where I was born. It was just so magnificent and really laid the foundation for who I am in a lot of ways. And it's really neat. It's really neat to have that, and then to have that inside of me on my journey in a different physical location.
When you talked about that creativity and you gave the example of when you moved to Israel and you wanted the Trader Joe's so desperately, I understand that. Mine is, I just moved to Florida and mine's like 25 minutes away, which feels like forever, but at least I'm grateful there's one in the area. Anyway, when you think of creativity, and that course that changed even your perspective on that word and what it means and what it's capable of. Are there any barriers that come up for you when you think of applying your own creativity to the things that you want to produce?
Such an interesting question in terms of creativity and having like a block to creativity. I think that there are a lot of blocks that people in general may have in terms of trying to access their own creativity and really actualize their creativity, right? So I believe that there are a lot of latent ideas in the world, okay? So there's an idea that children, before they are 4 years old, are in this zone of absolute creative genius. And as they progress through their ages and stages, every single time that they are met with doubt and skepticism and individuals in their lives that do not believe in their capability, they, in general, people begin to buy into the narrative. You're too young, you don't have the skill set. Whatever it is, coming from a place of concern, of perhaps a parent who's concerned, who is really trying to protect their child, or perhaps it's an educator who is interested in compliance in the classroom. They're more interested in compliance and achieving these preset benchmarks than opening up to the possibilities of what can happen when we let go a little bit of a desired outcome. So I think that education is really, the world of education in its best and most progressive form is now returning to understand the creative power. So we're really moving out of the age of industrialization, right? Where we're bound by space. So in the industrial era, work became a place because all of the instruments that we needed in order to produce were large. Okay, the computer, once it came about, was magnanimous. We needed to be in an office place for that. That was really the beginning of the end. But even prior to that, when we're talking about the cotton gin, or we're talking about mills, or we're talking about a printing press, these are all physical objects which bound people to their places. And then gave way to this division of labor and this very clear and defined division of the tasks that individuals were performing in their professions. Whereas now, because of technology and because so much of what we do is portable, the world is our palette. we're no longer bound by place. So that really opens up a lot of creative channels. And what's also amazing that I'm starting to see in the world of the tech startup is that we are no longer bound by investments, right? So if we were going to start a business 50 years ago, it wouldn't be an online business. It would be, these online businesses now. I met someone today. It was really cool. They have an app where anyone, you and I, can go on their app. It's called Chuck, I believe. It's coming out in a few weeks, where you can go on the app and you can, with a few clicks of a button, design your own object that will be delivered to you and printed on a 3D printer. So they were explaining to me that in order to make this process happen, they don't even need an inventory. They need an app, and they have this capability offsite, and with a few clicks of a button, it's delivered to someone's door. So no longer are people bound by this great financial investment in order to start a business. And I think that with that, there's a removal of a certain level of fear for the average individual that is concerned about the possible risk. So when you take the fear of risk away, right, kind of start asking yourself, like, why not? What do I have to lose? And if you can remove the fear of failure, then there's nothing blocking anybody from doing anything.
I love how you answered that. It was an educational process for me to just listen to how you laid that out. So I really appreciated that part of it. Yeah, it's funny because when there's two sides of the intuition work that I do. There's developing and then there's strengthening your intuition, and they're very different. And a longer term commitment, if someone were to hire me, is I would help them strengthen. And so part of strengthening is clearing our inner power and connecting to our outer power. And the way to clear your inner power is to look at your first three dimensions. And in your mental, we clear all resentments. In your emotional, we clear harms that you've done to other people and harms that have been done to you. In your physical, you clear anxiety and you clear fear. And so when you're able to do a process like that, you really clear out anything that could be blocking you. And when you connect with your outer power, and that power comes in and connects to that little piece of outer power that was implanted in you when you were first born or conceived, that's where creativity is unleashed in a way that it's unstoppable. And so I agree with you where, and I take more of like a inner inventory kind of cleansing approach, I guess, a little bit, but we're on the same page. And I agree that once we clear certain things out of the way, not only are we flowing with creativity, but our purpose is just right there. And there's nothing holding us back anymore. And I can attest to that. Like I've done that work. When I cleared my resentments, I had 600. Okay. Like I had a lot going on.
600?
600.
Did you write every single one down?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
And I processed every single one.
It sounds like a really important and intense journey.
I've done it with many other people. And I've done it as a volunteer, and I've done it, as a paid coach. And the transformations are even just hard to describe, because what ends up happening is like your characteristics are your characteristics. We were born with them. You could argue that they're biological and they're attached to, your entire makeup. But we get to choose which characteristics we want to lead with and which ones we want to mute or quiet. And in that process, when you're clearing everything out, you can see all the pieces. And you can say, I love this one. I want to lead with this one. And you know what? This doesn't bring out the best in me. So we're going to have it take a back seat. It's going to just sit back here and we're going to turn the volume down. Right. And we get to customize who we are. We go to Chipotle, right? It's like, oh, they say, would you like brown, or what do they say? Would you like pinto beans or black beans? And we choose.
We choose.
The beauty of this whole thing is that when we have all these different experiences and when they're starting to cloud up, as you were saying, like when a child is within 4 years old, right? Typically, and hopefully there aren't too many traumatic experiences that happen to a child that young, but as they start living, stuff kind of starts getting in the way, right? But if we're able to look at all those experiences, all the emotions, all the memories, everything that's attached to them, and we pick and choose who we want to be based on what we've experienced and based on the qualities that we love about ourselves and we want to lead with, what ends up happening is it's not an or anymore. It's not the black beans or the pinto beans. It's, I'd like both. It's an and, right? We get to customize exactly who we are. And when we do that and we're honest about leading with characteristics that help others, it's like you're in the flow. Your whole life is flow.
I hear you. Makes a lot of sense to me.
And what's interesting is I've been talking to a lot of coaches lately because of Transforming Today show, and we all seem to be on the same page, but we come at it from a different angle. And how poetic is that? We all have different lives. We're all different people. We're learning similar lessons, but we're learning them because we have our own path that we've traveled to arrive to a similar place. So why doesn't it make sense that you're attracted to wanting to spend time with me? I'm attracted to wanting to spend time with you because we're resonating on a certain frequency together.
There's this idea in the Kabbalah, which is the mystical dimension of the Torah, that the original being that is known as Adam, okay, that this is, it was a person, but it was more than a person. It was a light being. And it was a compilation of every soul that will ever exist for eternity. And so that in our day-to-day lives here in the year 2018, however many years later we are after Adam, we were Adam and Eve. It was this one being, right? Masculine, feminine, and every soul that has ever come into existence. So the reason why I am attracted to someone in this world and their energy, or even repulsed by someone in this world, and this is where it gets interesting, is because we were next to each other in that original being, in that spiritual embodiment. We were close to one another there. And now we, as these dispersed sparks of light in the universe, are finding our way back to reunite every single person on the planet.
Mm. I love that imagery. And I was literally just talking to a coach, Danny Levin. It's I'll post this probably before this.
I just connected with him. It's so funny.
Okay. Yeah, and his mission is the mosaic, which is we are all connected. We are much more powerful as a team. He wouldn't put it this way, but as a team and as a collected, group of energies than we are alone. And he will say, the lie is that we're alone, and the truth is that we're all connected. And so it's making me laugh because I was just editing that one earlier today.
We're all on the same wavelength, and we are all saying the same thing. And what's so cool to me is that we have the technology now to physically connect us. So we were in this period of time where it appeared as though we were separate. And now I'm sitting here, how many miles away from you? Thousands of miles away. and we're looking into one another's eyes. And we could be in this room with, think about this for a second, everybody. And never before, maybe not everybody yet. So the technology is almost there. What's the cap right now on the video conferencing? It's like in the hundreds or the thousands. It's definitely not, 7 billion.
We
But
have one at work that I think does at least 5,000. So
that's a lot. That's a lot of people. But it is, if we think about this spiritual and scientific, and the dimension that technology brings is a return to what we were in the beginning, in the spiritual way, that we all, humanity and all souls in the universe, started as this one being. And because of technology and science, we can have that experience. That experience is physically possible in this world now. Oh, almost now. We're just waiting for a few more updates on Zoom and we'll be there.
Yeah, and I think, what bridges the gap, I think of like maybe two different extremes. I mean, obviously you think of politics and two different sides of the aisle, that kind of thing. But if you just, a lot of the work that I do with people when I'm helping them process resentments is first helping them understand where their expectations are and if they were appropriate to the situation or to that person or something. But then it's really about understanding that that person is probably doing their best and is most likely doing their best, and that we all have limitations in some ways, and some of us come out of the womb and we're handicapped, and some of us aren't. But in this society, you would never look at someone who's handicapped and you would have more compassion for someone who is handicapped than you would for, especially right now, someone who might have a mental disorder of some kind, right? It's easier to see one than the other, right?
Right. So there's the physical, something that is obvious in terms of the physical manifestation, and then there is that which does not necessarily meet the eye.
Right, and that could be emotional or it could be mental, right? And so there are these different layers, and society has kind of compartmentalized the way that we sort of interpret or take in one or the other. But if we get to the point of realizing that everybody's pretty much doing their best, and that if everybody has a limitation of some kind and we're able to not judge that limitation, and we were able to accept that that person is from their vantage point is doing what they believe is right, or doing what they just believe in general, it becomes an and. Right? It's not me against you anymore. It's, this is right for you and this is right for me. And because it's right for you, it's right. And because it's right for me, it's right. And therefore we can exist as an and. We don't have to be separated anymore. And so, not that I'm trying to be a cult leader here and say everybody has to believe that way, but it's kind of, instead of me saying you must believe that, like for you to be able to say, wow, Rebecca, that's interesting. And I love that works for you. I actually see it slightly different, but what I see really works for me. And it's almost like a glorified agree to disagree. It's like it's an agree to disagree wrapped in as much love as you can possibly fathom.
Right.
But
And I think for people who are operating from a point of trying to coexist, I think that it makes a lot of sense. And I think that really is the overwhelming majority of people. I mean, I think we can acknowledge that humanity has gone through different phases, and we have seen the best and worst in people over the course of history. I believe that we're progressing and evolving, but we're working out the details. And just in terms of bringing this back to a person everyday level of socializing, there's an idea, and I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. I read a lot of different ideas from the Jewish tradition. The idea is as follows, and it's that when I look at another human being and am tempted by the thought to question why they're doing what they're doing, or to be sad or frustrated with unmet expectations from them, to take a step back for a moment and understand that if I were in their situation with their circumstances and their resources and their limitations, I would not be able to do as good of a job as they're doing.
I love that. I've never thought of it that way. Like, you've changed my life today. Thank you so much. I've never thought of it that way.
So I would like to find the source, because I definitely didn't make that up. It's a Torah source, and it's something that really helps me a lot, because I try so much in my life to have an asset orientation. So what does that mean? It's the idea that whenever we meet someone or are put in a new circumstance, we are looking for the diamonds and we're looking for the good. And rather than coming into a new country or into a new culture and finding what is not working, which is okay too, it has its place if we're going to talk about innovating. But in terms of people and really embracing people of all types and all shapes and all cultures, we're detectives and we're looking for we're looking for their assets. And it's also, and I'm going to keep quoting line after line, and this one I can tell you where it comes from. It comes from, it's called Pirkei Avot, which means the passages of our fathers. And the particular passage says, it poses the question, a series of questions, and the one on this topic asks, who is wise? And the answer, as it says, is one who learns from all. And that has always spoken to me so deeply, because we're so fortunate to live in a world with other people. I would be so bored if I was by myself. I mean, it could be, relaxing for a little while, but this is the world we live in, and we're surrounded by all sorts of people, and we can learn from every single one. And what was so fascinating is that I've known that quote. I mean, I used to have a bookmark with that line on it when I was a kid, and I loved it. I was so fortunate to, have learned that. And just the other day, I woke up to this idea that it says all, right? It says one who learns from all, and that includes ourselves. And I feel like this idea of self-awareness has become so commonplace in our day and age. And if we were to go back, even 25 years ago, when Tony Robbins was just starting out, when he would talk about spirituality, people would kind of raise an eyebrow. And now, talking about self-awareness and talking about purpose and meaning and points of common connection and even spirituality has become commonplace. It's millennial.
I think of cults when you were just talking. And the reason why I think about that is because when you said that quote, the interpretation I heard was that no one is the leader. If we are able to learn from all, it's a collective learning, and it's almost like the concept of a mastermind, where you don't really have a facilitator or leader necessarily. And so when I think of cults, it's like I think of people who think they know more than others, and that they are the teacher and the others are the student. And what I'm really learning, this is like I've been in 3 cults in my life, like 3 actual cults, and I didn't realize I was in them. And this is mainly because I had a master manipulator in my life when I was younger, like from the start. And I didn't realize I was being manipulated by someone I trusted for most of my life. So of course I'm going to keep falling into these situations with other people or these organizations that it was so easy for me to just believe whatever they said.
Mm-hmm.
And until I started learning about the concept I've been sharing, where you can actually pick things that you like and you can leave the rest. And like, I didn't get out of that mentality until it was so clear to me. And it wasn't clear to me until about 4 months ago. Like
Wow.
literally, like this is something brand new. And so, I'm going to be writing this book. I'm starting about a week from now to like write this book. And it's, I guess you could call it a big idea book. It's an idea that I have. But the last thing I want, and maybe this is, I'm so grateful to have learned from what I am gathering from all that manipulation my whole life, is that like I never want to be a cult leader, or I never want to be a master manipulator. I never want the things that I share that might make sense to someone else inhibit them from taking it on and saying, I like this part of it, but I don't like this part. I want them to say that because I want it to be a customization for them. I take what resonates for you and challenge the rest or just leave the rest.
And own it. Own what is yours. And I feel also that that has to do with being humble to the notion that we do not understand the universe. We were brought into the universe and we have science, and science is such a tool, and it was created, as were we. And I do believe that there are leaders, and I see leaders very much as specialists and experts and individuals who have the intuition or the charisma or the power and strength, as well as humility, to facilitate individuals to fulfill their purpose.
Do you believe that everyone is a leader?
Such an interesting question. Do I believe that everyone is a leader? I don't think I can answer. I can speak for myself. And I remember being told from a young age that I was a leader. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't totally believe it. I didn't even know what it meant. And I think recently what I've come to discover, and I think it's has a lot to do with all of the changes that have happened in my life, and especially in moving. Moving for me was a really big deal. It was a dream that I had had for a long time. And it was challenging in the sense that I was not just moving by myself or moving. I wasn't moving with everyone that I was connected with. We left family and we left community and we left friends. And really, it was leaving the family that was the challenge. And that's what stopped me for many years. I think 11 years from the time that we had the idea to the time we actualized it. And it wasn't that they were even holding me back. It was that I wanted to be there with them. But I also got to the point where I felt that this was a leap I had to make for the future, for myself, for my husband, for our kids, to really actualize our dream. And in the ideal world, all of the people who were near and dear to us, perhaps they could have come with us, but it wasn't in the cards at the time. And that was 3 years ago, and it was really challenging. And I think the challenges were in the emotional component. For me, it was the sense of really feeling guilt and sadness that I had made someone else sad because I had left them. And that's hard. That's really hard to deal with. It's hard to function from a place, an emotional place like that. But what I've woken up to recently is that we can't please everybody all the time. And sometimes we have to make the leap. And sometimes we have to pursue the challenge. And I think it was really doing that in a lot of ways, in spite of all of the emotional difficulties that came along with it. That we did it. And we are where we feel that we need to be. And I think really in doing that, there's a sense of empowerment and a sense of leadership that I know what I want and I'm not going to let fear get in my way. And I think that as long as we're attuned, and I think you'll appreciate this piece, as long as we're attuned with our intuition and our purpose, it can only go the way it's supposed to go.
What if I change the question slightly and I said, is everyone a self-leader?
Is it possible for everyone to lead themselves? That's the question?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, Rebecca. Absolutely. And I really believe that it's the job of every parent, every educator, every mentor, every coach, every teacher to teach from a place that we are not depositing information necessarily. We are not filling up a vacuum. We are watering a seed. And it's within every single person to gain agency and understand within them. And the seed comes in so many shapes and sizes and variations. Like when we think about, as you were saying earlier, how in the coaching world, so many people are coming together with purposes that are aligned, and they're packaging that in different ways because each of us in our own unique experience, we have our unique gifts. And so much of our work is not necessarily filling up the empty space with facts and information. And, all of those things are great and good. And I'm a huge advocate for learning in all different shapes and forms. But at the core and at the root of all of it is a gift that we were given to do something unique on this earth and get in tune with whatever that is. So yes, I absolutely think that everyone can self-lead.
And you were sharing with me that you've gotten really in tune with a project that you're working on, a new business. You want to tell us about your startup?
Sure, I would love to tell you about it. And it goes back a couple years to the class in creativity that I was taking. And in this course, I took it upon myself to ask everyone. It was nearing the end of our program, and looking back upon the 3 years, I was really curious to understand what all of the different educators in our cohort of 120 professionals, what they appreciated from these amazing 3 years together. And the theme that kept repeating itself in all of these interviews and all this questioning was the value of having a mentor, the value of having access to experts and thought leaders and mentors and expertise. And a lot of our colleagues were excited to finish and open up the next chapter, but also a little bit sad to step away from that circle and the capacity to interact with mentors and access that. And so as a part of this project, this creativity project that we were asked to complete, I had the thought of creating a web portal for all of us to access our mentors. So it was like a video conferencing mentorship website for educators. And I was really excited about it. And it was a way of holding on to what we so appreciated about our program and what would be so helpful to us as we went on in our journeys as educational leaders. And I finished the program and started this journey, moving across the world to Israel. And one thing led to another. And I started meeting people in so many different circles who also really seem to be searching for not just information that we can find on the internet. We can all Google anything and everything. We can ask Alexa. We can read on Wikipedia. We can go through YouTube. We can sit on hours and hours of courses. But at the end of it all, that's a one-way street. We're not, as you and I are right now, having a conversation. We are not learning within the context of a relationship. Here, we are. And so this idea of having a portal for mentorship and advising really widened for me as I met people who worked in tech, say in video, who could use a consultation with someone about special effects or editing, someone who works in one facet of marketing could really benefit from speaking to someone else in new media. The list goes on. Business consulting, there is creative consulting, there are the skills that a person could build in the context of a relationship. And I think a lot of that goes back to this model of what education used to be before we were in the industrial era, which really limited us in terms of space. Work became this place that we went to because all of the objects that we needed to facilitate our work were big. But before that, people worked creatively. You'd have a shoemaker, you would have the fabric, the textile workers, and the blacksmith and the silversmith. And so often those individuals in those spheres would learn their craft through an apprenticeship because they were not limited by space. Now we're returning to a model where we're even less limited by space. And I feel very strongly that it is going to be through the context of relationships and really targeted conversations and targeted collaborations that innovations are going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so the website that we are rolling out soon, I'm really excited about it. It's called Sage Pair. It's going to be at sagepair.com. In about a week from now, July 1st, we're going to be piloting the site with our first 100 coaches. And I would be really excited if you'd like to join us as part of the first 100.
I'm honored.
And we're so excited. So we're going to be testing out this platform and doing everything we can to gather feedback about the experience that our coaches and consultants are having so that we can make this a tool to help people all over the world connect with whoever they need to connect with about anything. And we have the technology and we have the capability to do that. And we're going to make it happen.
Well, in my mind, it already is happening.
It's happening.
Whenever we talk about a creative idea, if we can even think it, it already exists. So I can feel it. I can feel its power. I think this is such a great initiative. It really ties into literally everything we've been talking today. And we didn't even plan it that way. It ended up being that way. So aside from my very best friend, Sarah Coletti, you're like my new best friend. Okay. Like, I loved spending time with you today. It was
so happy, Rebecca.
And I want to thank our viewers for being here. This was a little bit different from our normal format, but I just loved it. It flowed so well. And normally I don't talk as much, but you know, we just had such great engagement, and how poetic it is that this was an and, you know, today our contributions were really just a beautiful just conversation that we both shared together, contributing equally. So I appreciate that. This was out of the norm for me, but I loved it. Thank you for creating that space for me too.
You are so welcome. And thank you so much for having me on today.
You're very welcome. So that's it for us, guys, and tune in the next time. You know, visit sagepayer.com, and also visit my website, RebeccaWeintraub.com, if you are interested in learning more about intuition. That's it for us. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so we start with smiles.
Hi, Rebecca.
I have to open the show. What name would you like me to introduce you as today?
Azriela.
Azriela Jankovic. Is that right?
Azriela Jankovic.
Jankovic. Azriela Jankovic. Azriela, I love that name. Azriela Jankovic. Oh my God.
Thank you so much.
I love that name. Yeah, and it for me, it carries your spirit.